My first job in television actually was with NBC. The very first time I was on television was on network television. Paul Page and I had done the USAC Championship Network, as it was known back then, in 1978. And he was the TV voice of the IndyCar Series on NBC, and he asked me to be a pit reporter for the very first kart race that was ever held in March of 1979 in Phoenix. And so that was the first time that I had ever been on television. I did one other show for NBC later that year, and then later in 1979, of course, began full-time with ESPN. I can't really pinpoint when I've started falling in love, if you will, with the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. I went to races at the Richmond Speedway with a friend of mine as early as 6 years old, and then I guess through my brother, who was 6 years older than I am, he kind of told me about this place in Indianapolis called the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and the fact that they ran once a year on Memorial Day weekend a 500-mile race. And I just started trying to gather as much information and learn as much about it as I possibly could. Finally convincing my dad in 1958 to bring me here for qualifying, and then convincing him that we should go to the race, which we did for the first time in 1960. I was 12 years old, can tell you a lot about what happened that day, from when we arrived downtown to ride the train out here and walking back to the train after the race. It was one of those days in which I did indeed fall in love with and have never been able to kick whatever bit me that day. The one that I remember more than any other was the 1992 500, and I was working radio at the time. I was the anchor announcer for the IMS radio network. And that is the day that I will never forget, because I was in the tower, of course, and comfortably warm, but the turn reporters were just absolutely miserable with the weather, with the wind and the cold, and we were just saying to each other and during commercial breaks, man, I just wish this race would be over. We had so many crashes, and we were just saying, let's get this thing over with and get a winner and get out of here and get warm. And then, of course, it came down to the closest finish in history. Derek Daly was in the booth with me, and I, of course, noted that Little Al won the race by just a few hundredths of a second. You will hear, if you listen real closely to the radio broadcast, Derek go, oh, and then, of course, the final call was made into a Valvoline commercial, and they ran it a lot. I mean, every time that there was a race on television, it seemed they would run that Valvoline commercial, and I would hear the call again, and I would think, oh, brother, am I tired of that commercial? But then I would receive the royalty check, and things weren't so bad. When I was growing up, he was the man to beat, not only on the ovals, but on the dirt tracks, which I used to love to go to. I will remember AJ as someone who was at times difficult to be around, of course, but I also admire him for the fact that he was that way simply because he was so focused on the job. And if you caught him at the wrong time, he was not going to be particularly nice to you, but he was an incredible race driver and has shown down through the years that he's a great owner and will go down in history as one of the best drivers that ever lived and that raced here at Indianapolis and throughout the country. The Andrettis have always been very, very good to me. Mario, I don't think there was anybody who was better with the media than Mario. He never was too busy to give you an interview. He was never too busy to just sit down and talk and exchange a few words with you. Michael, much the same way. I remember I had done an interview with Michael and something didn't work. I don't know whether it was tape as we were using back then or exactly what, but I had to go up and ask him to do it again, and I thought, man, I sure don't want to do this because he's busy and has other things to do. But I did, and he said, of course, let's do it again, whatever you need. That's the kind of thing that I will remember about so many drivers. They were just always willing to help out, even a cub reporter like me, when I needed their services.